We can all single out our favorite awesome ending to a Star Trek episode. There are certainly plenty to choose from. Some are grandiose and dramatic, and are often the midway of a two-parter. Others are more understated, but equally as effective. Kirk's "let's get the hell out of here" and Barclay's "computer" and "program" are just some examples. Others still have capped off the episode with little more than a hearty belly laugh on the bridge. An awesome ending typically also means an awesome rest of the episode has gone on before it. That final payoff has to feel earned after all. Somehow, however, a great ending must swing in to bolster a not-so-great episode. Thankfully, this list took some time to compile because there are very few examples in Star Trek of the bad needing last-minute rescue by the good where quality is concerned. An awesome ending doesn't mean redemption for a terrible episode either. It simply means that they stuck the landing. In some cases, however, a conclusion, even years later, has provided at least a fresh perspective on a previously maligned part of the franchise. So with all that being said, let's make like Data with the punchline to a bad joke and look at some of those episodes that got there in the end. I'm Bree from TrekCulture, and here are 10 terrible Star Trek episodes with awesome endings. Number 10. Fairhaven. With our sincerest apologies to Sean Ferrick and this writer's paternal grandfather, we're about to take a trip to Tom Paris's interpretation of 19th century Ireland. Get ready for some dodgy accents and even dodgier signage. Beyond the stereotypes that lack of a competent dialect coach, what is no doubt least fair about Fairhaven is the episode's treatment of Captain Janeway's love life. After all those years guiding Voyager safely through the Delta Quadrant, sacrificing romance for responsibility, Janeway deserves better than a dalliance on the holodeck. No offense, Doc. Plus, if you can ask the computer to stop your partner snoring, don't ask too many questions. While Fairhaven struggled on many fronts, it was the head of a neutronic storm that saved it. When Voyager begins to lose the inverse warp field it was using as an anchor, the only solution is to use a deflector beam to cut their way through the rest. To get the power they need will mean saying farewell to most of Fairhaven, and maybe a certain Michael Sullivan. For a moment, thanks to some superb acting from Kate Mulgrew, you can see all of the consequences of the decision to reroute power from the holodeck in Janeway's regretful expression. But it's only a moment. "Do it," she orders, never forgetting her second duty. Seconds later, we are also treated to one of the most awesome lines ever uttered in Star Trek. "Scrap the residual ions off the sonic showers if you have to." Oh, and delete the wife. Number 9. A mathematically perfect redemption. You know what? Peanut Hamper is a stupid name. Things have got to be pretty bad to annoy Devon Attendee. That's exactly what this exocomp did, however, when she beamed herself off the Cerritos to avoid saving the day in no small parts. It's no secret that the direct follow-up to that episode didn't win many fans here at TrekCulture. In fact, I'm thoroughly surprised I haven't been ejected from Cargo Bay 101 for even bringing it up. Sure, all that was wrong with a mathematically perfect redemption was the detestable central character and their entire story arc, but that's literally peanuts. You know what? I blame Data. The clue, however, lies very much in the name. If Peanut Hamper was mathematically perfect, yet pointedly absurdist, we probably shouldn't have expected anything less than ridiculous from the ending of Exocomp's noddingly titled second episode. In a mathematically perfect redemption, Peanut Hamper's supposed change of heart, then most definitely not as she betrays everyone at the end, doubtly subverts our expectations. In Star Trek, we're used to things and people turning out just fine, so it's a bit of a shock when they don't. Looking back at the title of the episode, we then realize they'd been telling us that the ending, like the name, would be irredeemably stupid all along, and that is redeemably awesome. Number 8. Hatchery. This late outing of Star Trek Enterprise's third season is more of an oddity than it is an out-and-out terrible episode. After they'd obtained the coordinates from Degra through creative means, it took the crew of the NX-01 a while to get to the Xindi staging area Azadi Prime. It's the stretching out of that journey that gave us Hatchery. Spoiler alert, Captain Archer gets sprayed in the face by a dangling appendage in a room full of sacks. Of eggs, aboard a crashed Xindi insectoid ship, to be more precise. Unbeknownst to even Dr. Phlox at the time, the spray had caused Archer to reverse imprint on the baby insectoids. He became obsessed, going to greater and greater lengths to protect the hatchlings, and in doing so, endangered the mission. Eventually, his senior staff decided that enough was enough. Although not a unique idea for Star Trek, hatchery is saved from the madness by the idea for a mutiny at its end. As the situation with Archer went from bad to worse, the members of Starfleet realized they had to intervene to relieve the captain of his command. The same level-headed thinking could not be said for the Makos, who, so obsessed with following the chain of command above all else, would probably have gone skinny dipping in the warp core if the captain had ordered them to. The Starfleet crew were more focused to seize the bridge and ship from Mako control in a dramatic fashion. Number 7. Encounter at Farpoint. If we're being honest, Star Trek The Next Generation had to work to achieve a greatness that was not too present in its pilot episode. If you skip ahead about 3.5 seasons, it's almost like you're watching a completely different show. Encounter at Farpoint, in essence, is 2 scripts forced together that don't quite work. Something about a giant space jellyfish, and an omnipotent letter of the alphabet that freezes people. Captain, I'm sensing a powerful mind in these knee-high boots. Accounts are contradictory for the finer details, but the general idea, as reported in the 2014 documentary Chaos on the Bridge, is that Encounter at Farpoint was originally a 90-minute script written by veteran Star Trek the Original Series and Star Trek the Animated Series writer and story editor D.C. Fontana. Fontana's draft focused exclusively on the mystery of Farpoint Station and on assembling the new crew. Gene Roddenberry then took Fontana's script and added the Q character to bump it up to 2 hours like the network wanted. To this day, I have no idea what that episode was about, former Paramount president John Pike said in Chaos on the Bridge. It didn't really even have an ending, Pike later noted. That's not strictly true, however. Encounter at Farpoint's saving grace is its very last, now iconic Picard line that has shaped things to come ever since. Let's see what's out there. Engage. Number 6. Spocks Brain. Yes, we know, you're probably thinking that we've all lost our minds too. After all, this is the episode that's regularly voted as one of the worst in all of Star Trek. Even its lackluster title feels like they'd just given up as the original series entered its 3rd season. Budget cuts were going on, and unfortunately, they began most literally with Spocks Brain. So terrible the episode is that Spocks Brain has often been used as a marker by which other terrible episodes are judged. For example, the 2008 reference book Star Trek 101, A Practical Guide to Who, What, Where, and Why, gave us the Spocks Brain Award, given to the worst episode of each of the then series. Leonard Nimoy is also on record as having been embarrassed throughout the filming of the episode, as he described the process in his autobiography, I Am Spock. There's no way of getting around the simply bonkers concept of Spock's brain. But then maybe we don't have to. We can just lie back and enjoy its equally crazy ending, in which Dr. McCoy downloads into his brain all the advanced surgical knowledge that he needs to reattach Spock's brain. Halfway through, though, McCoy starts to lose this knowledge and has to reconnect Spock's brain's speech center so that his own patient, Spock, can help him with the rest of the operation. It's silly, it's fun, it's Star Trek, that's awesome enough for us. Number 5. Star Trek Nemesis. At the time of its release in 2002, Star Trek Nemesis was panned by fans and critics alike. Without the box office receipts, it destroyed any chance at a follow-up movie for the Next Generation crew, and taxed the rest of the franchise with fatigue, hoisted by its own title. Nemesis isn't an episode of a television show, but by now it is, for all intents and purposes, a miniseries that you can watch before Star Trek Picard, and really before Star Trek Lower Decks and Star Trek Prodigy 2. Looking back at the film in strict isolation, we can reproach Nemesis for its over-reliance on action sequences, some of which, and you know which, border on the absurd. The central premise of mistreated clone come to seek vengeance on the Federation via a magical new superweapon was also arguably not strong enough to carry an entire movie. Then, of course, Nemesis tries to pull off a double allegory with Data in B4 and Picard and Shinzon, but pissed everyone off instead with the most senseless death of a beloved character. We've now got to spend a good deal more time with the Next Generation crew, and, most notably here, we've had rebirth and resolution for Data, thanks to B4. In that way, the ending to Nemesis is no longer a disappointing and dangling conclusion, but the awesome setup for something much bigger and better. It can't redeem the film as a whole, but it does place it within the properness of context that we'd begun to think it would never have. Number 4. The Disease. It's the one where Harry Kim gets a space STD, and, not without irony, from a member of a supposedly xenophobic species, the Faro. Hey editor, just watched this episode last week and I still can't remember, but I think it is pronounced Faro. If I messed up, let me know. We also learned that if you want to have sex in Starfleet, you might need to ask the captain first. I think the birds and the bees might have flown out the airlock a while back. Harry was glowing, but sadly the episode wasn't, save for its final few scenes. Although finely acted, the love affair between Harry and Darren Tall in The Disease never quite felt as overwhelmingly intense as it was meant to be. In fact, it's only towards the end of Act 4 and into Act 5 that the episode really reaches its stride. Janeway must reprimand Harry once more for his actions and dismisses him to sickbay. Instead, he follows the captain from the conference room to the ready room, pleading his case in a pretty awesome tracking shot across the bridge. There is also some excellent CGI work in those last scenes, particularly the shot of Voyager on its side as it decouples from the generational ship. Ultimately, however, it's the conversation between Janeway and Kim in sickbay that caps the episode. Janeway opens up to Kim in an honest exchange and shows her protective, caring side. The Faro generational ship has fragmented, but the crew of Voyager are more united than ever. Not as Starfleet officers, but as a family. Number 3. Coming Home. If we're including the Season 4 finale of Star Trek Discovery on this list, then it's not because the episode was terrible per se, but because it came to conclude what was an imperfect season in general that often fell afoul of overreaching plot, stretched to its limits across 13 episodes. No sooner was Discovery out of the gate in what was looking to be a bit of a brighter galaxy after the resolution of the burn, that yet another doomsday event was set in motion with the dark matter anomalies. We weren't given the first episode to catch our breath before another disaster kicked in. What the ending to the DMA crisis provided, however, was something distinctly spectacular. We may have been teased with all sorts of candidates for Species 10C, from the Q to the Nacine to the Metrons to the Iconians, but the actual choice was innovative and truly in the spirit of Star Trek, aided by outstanding visual effects. The coming home to Earth and of Earth to the Federation at the very end of the episode also felt like a welcome return to the basics for Discovery itself. With Season 5 having just brought the show to its conclusion, Coming Home as an episode and title is far more prescient. Discovery now has to finish what it started. Number 2. Anomaly. I'm sorry, Enterprise, but it's another third season episode. We do actually really enjoy this season as a whole, myself included. Don't make me tap the Xindi arc is awesome sign. Only the second episode in, Anomaly has received some of the strongest criticism, and rightly so, for its depiction of torture as used by Captain Archer on an Osarian prisoner. For a Starfleet officer and an episode of Star Trek, this is terrible in the sense of causing terror and awesome when it's mixed with fear. As the episode reaches its climax, fear is the theme for everyone on board the NX-01. Using the information that Archer has obtained, the crew is engaged in a fight with an Osarian ship in order to get a hold of its Xindi database. Things are touch and go for a bit, the sparks fly, and Enterprise loses its hull plating before Hoshi completes 90% of the download. All things considered, it's a rather decent space battle. Whatever your thoughts on the episode, the fact also remains that it happened. It's there now for all of us to watch as part of canon. And the same applies to Archer by the episode's end. He has done what he's done, but will now have to atone for it later. For now, he must get on with the mission. Played just on the edge between stoic and guilt-ridden by Scott Bakula, Archer walks into the command center, shrouded by the darkness that fills most of the room, and he simply says, "Computer, load the Xindi database." Number 1. Tuix. Yep, you heard that right. Hold on to your orchids because we're going there. Normally, in good fun, Tuix never fails to divide fans down the middle more than the man himself. What began as a transporter accident, fairly commonplace for Star Trek, turned into something dreadfully, gloriously more. We all know what happened at the end, but what's terrible about Tuix is we're still picking sides. It's not unusual to read "Janeway murdered Tuix" and then scroll down to find "Janeway was right." Mark my words, you'll see it in our comments section below. The actors have also weighed in over the years, as Kate Mulgrew herself said on Twitter back in 2020, willing to hear the crew's thoughts as always. However, shouldn't Tuvok and Neelix have the biggest say? Oh wait, they couldn't. I stand by my decision to restore them to their lives. However, the episode already set up the duality in its final act. Tuix. Captain, what you're considering is an execution! Janeway. Aren't you arguing for an execution too, of Tuvok and Neelix? In all of this, we've been missing the point. It's not about which side you're on, or who's right or who's wrong, but the luxury of the debate. That's something that we, the viewer, can afford, but that Janeway, as captain in the end, could not. There isn't an answer. It was an opportunity to show Janeway making a really tough decision which captains are faced with, as Tuvik's screenwriter Kenneth Biller stated in Cinefantastic, Volume 28. Either way, the final decision is hers, and here, inaction is a choice the same as an action. It is, then, not the choice Janeway makes, but the fact that she makes one which gives the ending of Tuix its enduring power. Or, in other words, holy Janeway didn't mess around. After all, it's only because she made the decision that we get to argue over it all these years later. And those were 10 terrible Star Trek episodes with awesome endings. If you can think of any that we missed, then make sure to let us know in the comments section below. If you enjoyed this video, then go ahead and leave it a like. And if you like us, then why not hit that subscribe button? You can find the original article for this over on whatculture.com, and you can find us on social media at TrekCulture on Twitter and Blue Sky, and at TrekCultureYT on Instagram. You can also find me across various social medias by simply searching Trekkie Bree. But with all that being said, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and don't forget to live long and prosper.